All right. Thanks so much for sticking around. My name is Trey Shields. I am the senior programmer for the Philadelphia Film Festival and Film Society. And I'm here with a very special guest, director and writer of Jumbo, Zoe Wittock.
Hi.
So this film had its debut at Sundance. It went to Berlin, but it's also been all over the world. And it's also found a home at a number of genre film festivals, most recently Nightstream. And I'm sure you've been asked a lot of questions. You've done a lot of Q&As, but usually I hate this question. It's a lazy one, but with this type of concept of the film, I have to ask, where'd you get the idea for this?
The idea, so I was actually doing my master's in the US at the time because I was coming out of AFI, the American Film Institute. And when I read an article about a woman whose name is Erica Effel, and she's called Erica Effel because she fell in love and married the Eiffel Tower. So when you get an article like this, you're like, this is really strange, this is really funny at the same time. And I guess at first I didn't really make much of it, but I just sort of found myself talking about it again and again. Did you hear about this woman who married the Eiffel Tower to friends? And after weeks of me sort of talking about it and wanting to stir conversations around that subject matter, I was like, well, maybe there's something more behind it, And so I really started trying to understand more of the psychology of this person and where this was coming from. And by starting research, I decided to contact her directly and just try and get her story. Yeah. So when I finally got a hold of her, she was very open-minded and really could easily talk to me about this love story. And I guess when I met her, I was really surprised because she was really grounded in the way she was expressing herself. And I was stupidly expecting more of a freak, when I got someone that was so normal that it was almost disappointing. But if you think about it, that's what made it really interesting in the end. And then I was like, well, she was talking to me. So she was talking to me about this love story. And I was like, well, this is not just any kind of love story. And then she just would say, yes, it is. And then just by insisting and explaining to me her love story, I was like, well, you know what? Why not? This is maybe just another love story. After all, she's not really doing anything bad to society or anyone in society. So why not? And so that journey of me sort of going from reading this article thinking, okay, well, this is a freak, to and this is really weird, to me accepting her journey and understanding it better and really sort of gaining empathy, a lot of empathy around her. I was like, well, that journey is something that might be worth sort of telling in a feature film, because I think that fiction has such a power of being able to be in a protagonist's shoes and really feel what they're feeling as they're feeling from the most internal point of view. And I was like, if you're dealing with such an extreme character compared to the norms of society, fiction is really the best way to get you to feel whatever she's feeling, to see whatever she's seeing. And so it was like, for me, if there's anything to do on the subject matter, it's not documentaries like it had been done, but more a fiction. And so, started thinking, and when I guess the idea of making it in a park with a ride sort of came to me, it became evident that not only is this a cool idea, but it's a feasible idea because I could do something with that object versus the Eiffel Tower, which, might be something that drags people from all over the world to come and watch. But ultimately, to me, it really doesn't do much except being like this static object that everybody's staring at, but it's not so central,
Yeah, good luck shutting down the Eiffel Tower for filming.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you think about production, you're like, if I'm going to see a producers telling them, well, I want to make a film about a woman falling in love with an object and it's going to be the Eiffel Tower, they're like, double nose.
Yeah, it's the city of love. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fiction element, how important it was to kind of translate it to fiction, and it was a natural development. I feel like you can view this film in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Some might see it as like a coming of age story, a sexual awakening, a coming out story, maybe a story of queerness. Did you have that in mind when writing it, or were you just telling the story?
At first, I was just telling a story. I think the first thing that kind of really came to me was more how that relationship would help the main characters sort of come of age. So I think definitely the first the first story that I was telling was a coming of age, and originally the film had a much more tragic ending, so it was really more that's kind of coming of age. Then because of that tragic ending was actually more of a coming out, and then when it became a more beautiful ending, well, I was like a more upbeat, not more beautiful, but more upbeat ending, which I thought was the best ending for the film. It just kind of was like, well, it can be a coming of age and a coming out and a love story, simply, because you get the happy end of the love story in a way, which is going to be really happy to most people, but still some people are going to be like, is this a happy end or a sad ending, because she is marrying an object? So like, and I thought that ending was even more interesting, because that ambiguity was, I thought was great, rather than being like, well, she's in love with the ride, but she's going to pay for it, and pay the consequences and the price for it, which I thought was a more convenient ending.
Yeah. When you're speaking of tragedy, I mean, there's certainly still elements there. I feel like Marguerite, the mother, often kind of hints at something going on.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty positive you don't really state it openly. Was that on purpose? Do you have an idea in your mind what exactly is going on with Eugene?
Yeah, the reason why I chose not to state whatever whatever condition she might have, or whatever symptoms she might have had, or whatever diagnosis she might have had, is that I really wanted to take the story away from any sort of intellectual interpretation, and really be there in terms of feelings. But if we forget about norms, if we forget about preconceived ideas of what a human should be or shouldn't be, and if we just look at this particular situation from a heartfelt point of view, are you ready to say yes to the story? Because I think the moment that you say put it intellectually, more questions come to mind, and and I wanted to avoid that side and really keep it as a heart-to-heart sort of story. So yeah, I deliberately sort of kept it away from people's mind. But if you look at the reality of OS people, which are objecting sexuals, that's how they call themselves, most of them come from some sort of autism, whether it's Asperger's syndrome or more or less intense. But and that's actually one of the reasons why they kind of feel and see the objects differently, because they can have a different kind of sense of vision, auditory sense as well, so they'll be more reactive to those kind of sensations versus just human interactions, which is harder for them. So that's the more, I guess, scientific way of categorizing the subject. But I really wanted to keep her away from etiquettes and boxes, and then be like, she's free, she's just a human being trying to find herself, and how do you react to that, and not how do you react to she's someone that's autistic and she's trying to feel that. I didn't want that to be in the part, because I also felt that it kept the subject matter more open to interpretations as well.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about Noemi's performance in a little bit, but there's also like the 70-foot-ton elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So you're talking about being grounded and like skipping like the intellectual and just kind of like the more primitive feeling and like soul of the movie. But how do you do that with an inanimate object? Like, why'd you choose the ride in particular, the jumbo?
Yeah, so when I said earlier that the story really came to life when I found out what object it would be, I didn't know which specific ride, but I knew that I wanted it to be in a park, in a ride, for many reasons. The first one being that an attraction park is a place of many memories and many feelings. So I wanted to definitely call that nostalgia to be part of, the sensory experience. Do you say that? Yeah. Kind of. So that was the first reason, and it definitely transports you back into this kind of childhood sort of open-mindedness, of not having too many judgments on people when you're in a park or an attraction park. And then the second thing is obviously the object itself, which, contrary to the Eiffel Tower, can hear, it can move, it can make a bunch of lights, it can make sounds, it vibrates, it has different kinds of texture with the oil and the metal, and it's cold and hot at the same time. So I just suddenly felt like, I was like, well, there's so many opportunities in terms of tools that I can use to create a dialogue between her and this machine without having to go completely fantastical. Because the whole thing of the tone of the film was trying to be grounded in some way and fantastical in some way, but never too unrealistic that it's completely impossible unless it's in her dreams, and never too grounded that we're losing the magic of it all, you know? So it's like finding that right balance. And so, and in choosing that specific ride, which is a movie at 24, what I loved about that one is it had a lot of possibilities of movement as well as possibilities of lighting shows. And I love the fact that when it kind of went down on the subject matter like that, it was very over empowering and very strong, and it was suddenly this very impressive machine falling on you that could be dangerous in some way or powerful, and then suddenly when it turns around, it becomes the hand of King Kong, you know, catching this woman falling, you know, and it became a reassuring place to be in, just looking at the star and dreaming in a very comfortable position. So I just love that ambiguity in that specific machine.
And then what about so the lights are kind of already there, but the
Yes.
sounds I feel like you kind of had to make up on your own, and that kind of very low end is traditionally maybe masculine, because you did genderize like she referred to as he.
Yes.
But like there is that kind of low end. How did you come up with the voice?
So the voice of the film of Jumbo, that was I had quite a few ideas prior to sort of going into the sound editing, which I knew I wanted it to be both mechanic and organic at the same time, and find those sounds that could either be one sound that does both or multiple sounds that we combine. And in the end, we didn't really find the one that did both, so we ended up combining lots of different sounds with Maxence, the sound designer. But what we did is we mixed diegetic sound from the shoot that we found in the machine. So we recorded as many sounds as we could from that machine. And then we sort of, you know, we took sounds that we found, you know, from, you know, inside a gutter, you put a certain type of mic and then it reverberates and creates these crazy sounds that you can't really hear naturally. And then part of it was like elephant sounds and whale sounds and dinosaur sounds, which, you know, obviously not real dinosaurs. So it was a bunch of, it was a real creation, and it was a whole process, because at some point I think we went too far, and then we had to sort of take a step back and find the right sort of middle tone that worked for the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's funny you mentioned dinosaurs, just because at times you can almost look at this film as like Spielbergesque, in that,
yeah.
like, you know, just the childlike wonder, experiencing something out of this world. Yes. And especially with like the kind of sound, like Close Encounters, like the whoa, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely love Close Encounters, and I force myself not to rewatch it, but it's definitely in the back of my mind, of course.
I feel like any cinema lover,
this world experience.
Yeah, any cinema lover is just kind of like there, always kind of floating around.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mentioned earlier, Eugene is played by Naomi Merlan, and probably most of our audience would recognize her from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which we played last year. Was this filmed after that, and was it after the release, or?
So we actually shot Jumbo before she was even casted on Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So I casted Naomi a long time ago, before we had all the financing. So she was on board on the film for a while before we even got to shooting. Then we shot the film, and so because we had a tinier budget than Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and we had a more complicated post-production because of like visual effects, etc. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a project that went really fast, because I remember we finished shooting like late June, early July. I remember Naomi getting the call early August for a shoot in September, immediately being casted for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and then going on set and shooting, and suddenly it was edited and it was screening in Cannes the next May. So it went really fast for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And for us, it took a longer post-production, and then we ended up deciding to wait on the release of the film for Sundance as well. So we also waited a few months, you know, added to that, cycle. And then COVID and everything, and you know, and here we are now. But in a way, I think it's even better for the film, because now Naomi, you know, is known internationally as well for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. She's even more known here in France. So it's definitely helped in sort of getting more attention to the film. So in a way, I think life is well done, you know. And what I love is, for me, we shot Jumbo and I hadn't seen any images of a Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And so when I saw Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I was really like, I'm so, so glad that I took her for Jumbo, because it's two opposite performances, you know, very different. One is a lot more constrained, the other one is a lot more, you know, open even. So I just felt that it was so extraordinary to see an actress, especially a French actress, do like opposite sort of, you know, performances, because French actresses, I love them, but they have a tendency to sort of do the same thing kind of over and over again. And I think Noémie is one of the younger generation sort of rising stars of France that really understands that it's okay for French films to be eccentric, and it's okay for you to really do an interpretation that is not a part of you but a completely different sense of you, you know, and to really play someone that is not you, versus the cinéma vérité that we always sort of push for in France more, you know.
And you're also always thinking of kind of just like your PR team, like you want to have that like image, you're saying, like in a way?
Sorry, I didn't catch it.
You want to have like your public relations team in
Yeah.
the back of your mind, because you're always kind of like this specific image for French actors. I've never really
Yeah,
thought about
exactly,
that. Yeah.
exactly. And I think, yeah, she kind of like transcends that image, you know. So yeah, no, I think it's so much more. I'm so glad, because originally, I don't know if you heard about that anecdote, but originally she came in the casting call like one of the first few actresses, and she hadn't really done much, and I did not call her back right away. I I was like, I really thought she did an amazing performance, but I thought she was too strong for the character, and I couldn't find a way physically to tone her down and make her more fragile looking. So I did not call her back. And then I saw more than 100 girls, and even called those back, and did casting, about like 8 months of casting, until I was like, I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't say yes to one of them, even though they were great. And I was like, I know I've seen the character. And also within the process of casting, you get to know your character better as well. And so I was like, I have to go back. And so I went back and I saw Noémie's audition again. And I was like, why did I never call her back? At least I should have called her back and given her that chance. I don't understand why you didn't do it. So then I picked up my phone myself and I was like, listen, I'm really embarrassed. I made a mistake. Will you please come back? I really want to see you. And she did. And then she just blew me away and I cried. And the casting, and I was like, okay, well, this is definitely her. But yeah, so yeah, that's for the anecdote.
So what was it like coaching her? I mean, you said like the physicality was really important. What was it like coaching her, having a love story with a big giant machine, essentially?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the coaching was just her and me, you know, playing with objects, looking at the world. We really worked more than on dialogues. We really worked more on physicality, like you were saying. It's like we were trying to see, how is this character walking? How is she talking? How is she looking at the world? When is she sort of, you know, grounded and turned towards the earth? When is she turned towards the sky? And really working on that and doing a lot of improv with her in as prep rather than working on the scenes. Like maybe once or twice we read the script, and you know, I would have her just laying down, you know, on a couch just reading the dialogue, just to get a little bit of that sense. And suddenly, just by turning around, and the funny thing is, because she was only talking to me and not to other actors and interacting with other people, she really was more focused on, I think, the whatever sign that life could give, you know, like a curtain that blows with the wind, is that a curtain coming to life? You know, is suddenly you hear a sound, is that someone trying to communicate? And you become so attentive when there's silence around you, so attentive to the world around you. We really worked on that anyway, yeah, to get her.
Yeah, so there was no table read with Jumbo.
There was only one, a quick table read with the main actors, but in prep and research, we didn't really work a lot with the other actors. I worked with the other actors and we worked alone. And there was maybe half a day where she worked with Emmanuelle Berco, who plays the mother. So we got their connection going a little bit. But I really tried to avoid her from too much contact with the other actors.
Yeah, and I feel like that comes through because she's certainly isolated internally and externally. And she's
Yeah,
almost like frightened by interactions with others.
yeah,
And I guess I could see that kind of, we're not in Paris. you know? It's not like a major metropolis. What was the reasoning behind location? Was it just where this ride was, or was it something else?
No, we actually moved the ride there. So we really wanted that location. So I'm from Belgium, and I always spent all of my summers in the Ardennes. So I actually originally wrote the film in the US, okay, because I was finishing school when I wrote it. So I wrote it in English and I translated it into French when I decided that I needed to get a Euro, shot to get reconnected to Belgium and France, and so I when I came here, I translated it into French, and when I thought, where can I set it? For me, it was quite obvious that it was the northern France or Belgium, the Ardennes, because I wanted that kind of fairy tale feeling of there are people around them, but they're isolated and alone at the same time. And that isolation creates two things. One is obviously the suffocating relationship with the mother that is overly there. And the second is that it allows also for that tone that we were looking for of magic realism. It gives the space for the magic to happen. I mean, try and get some magic happening with the Eiffel Tower when there are so many people all the time, seeing it. It's not possible. So the isolation helped for the magic to sort of come through and bring it to life, etc. And so for me, it was really, it was really important. And I wanted to portray Belgium as well in a way that we could, we hopefully haven't seen it before.
Yeah. Yeah, I was unfamiliar with that whole region, so thank you.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So I have to wrap up, but because like I mentioned at the beginning of all this, you've done quite a tour with this film, and I'm sure there are some questions that we covered that are like similar territory. But has there been anything you've wanted to mention or talk about? Something that maybe someone just hasn't noticed about the film, they just want to give a little shout out to?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Let me think for a second. I don't know. Well, there's something that I really love about the film, and sometimes people are a little bit afraid of mentioning it, is the humor in the film as well, because of the subject matter. I've been in screenings where I could see that people were ashamed of laughing because they were afraid of laughing at the character and being intolerant. When I think it's part of the experience to really laugh with the absurdity of some moments, and then at the end still have that empathy. So I definitely, I actually wanted to push it even further, the comedy, but I got toned down by people. I was like, no, don't laugh too much. But and in a way, I think it's right. It's like finding the right balance between the drama and the comedy. But yeah, so maybe that. But I don't know if there's. Oh yeah, did you notice? But because I couldn't really put the shots in there to really show it, but there was really something about the mother and me wanting the mother to be in this childlike environment as well. So if you go in her bedroom, you see all the teddy bears, but it's really because I couldn't leave all the scenes in there. So like you only see it in pieces, but some people noticed it. So I wonder if you guys noticed it.
Well, the one I didn't necessarily notice the teddy bears, but maybe music selection for her, car she drives, and her costume or like her outfits. I feel like she's like a stunted growth as well.
No, exactly.
And she definitely provides probably like the most comedy, like when she first meets daughter's boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's really funny. I love this actress, Emmanuelle Berco. I don't know if you did you play this film, My King, Mon Roi from Maïwen, that played in Cannes, and no?
In the past like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it was probably 2016.
I don't recall.
But that was a really good film, and Emmanuelle was playing in it, and she plays someone it's an extremely dramatic film, about it's a love story about a narcissistic pervert making a woman miserable. And she won Best Actress in Cannes for that performance. But so this is a very dramatic thing, but when I met her, I just thought she had this craziness in her. So I was really eager to explore that comedy in her that we hadn't really seen in her as an actress.
That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Zoe. This has been awesome. I'm sure this film is going to start a lot of conversation.
Hopefully, yeah.
That's a lot of light to it. I'm really excited to see how our audience reacts to it.
Me
Because
too.
at times, you know, like I like empathize so much with Jean, and I'm just
Yeah.
like cringing, you know, at times.
Yeah.
But then it's also very funny.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I think that's the point. It's like being a bit of both, cringing and empathizing. And at the same time, at the end, the point is like, let's ask ourselves that question. Can we allow this? Should we or should we not? And I think that conversation is the most interesting thing about the film. Once, if you've attached yourself to the character, you know, if you've had that empathy for the character. But anyway, also, if any of the audience, because we can't be physically in the same rooms, etc. If they want to react to the film and talk to me, I'm also, you know, on Twitter or Instagram, and I try as much as I can to respond to people's comments, so that we can exchange since we're so far away, you know.
yeah. So what's real quick? What's your name on Instagram, Twitter?
Oh yeah, so my name on Instagram, it's easy. It's Zoe Wittock. It's so you can find me. And I think on Twitter, it's an old name, but I still have it. It's Woulout_Zoe. So it's WOULOUT, Woulout. I'm from Africa, so this was a nickname in Africa. _Zoe.
Awesome.
But I think if you type Zoe Wittock, you'll find me anyway. So just type my name on either and you'll find me.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, pleasure.
Cool.